Well, hello and welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Your Blank What Now podcast. My name's Marci Nettles, and I'm your host. And I absolutely love being able to bring you the vulnerable stories of so many different people that are sharing how they found themselves in positions to where they didn't know if they could get out of it or not. They were in breakdown opportunities. Yet what they did is they chose to do something different, to be able to move out and break through into the future that they wanted to have. And my guest today is exactly a perfect example of that. Her name is Natalie Tucker, and she is a 33-year young, crunchy Christian mama residing in Florida. She met her husband and got married within 6 months in 2021. The same year, she went on a healing journey that started with explanting her breast implants after having them 10 years. Natalie has been sober for 5 years, and in 2023, she had a natural, unmediated water birth, exclusively breastfeeding her son. Natalie is a business owner, UGC content creator, and social media marketer that enjoys working from home, chasing Jesus, and raising babies. Her background stems from working in sales to dropping out of college, playing in the nightlife industry, joining in network marketing, and competing in powerlifting and bodybuilding. She's been in competitions for this, guys. I can't wait for her to share this part of the story. But she reads every ingredient on every list and doesn't believe anything in the news. Oh, and she is also the mama to two Persian cats. So I'm super excited to welcome you to the show today, Natalie. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, together we decided that the title of your episode would be You're Scared Your Breast Implants Caused Infertility. What now? Wow, what a great topic, and I can't wait to dive into it. But before we get there, will you please expound a little bit? Because I know I gave a lot of information in your bio there about who you really are. But can you share a little bit more with the What Now tribe about what your childhood was like and really what kind of values were you raised with?
Yeah, absolutely. I come from a stable home, a stable home with two loving parents, and my childhood was very good looking back on it. I was able to play sports. I was very active. I always had something going on, stayed busy. I'm an only child, so there was some boring times at that. But a lot of my childhood, I just remember being fulfilled in everything that I desired. And then as I got older, the worldly influences, so to say, started to creep in, and I would get distracted and focus on the things that were not so fulfilling, or so I thought.
Yeah, yeah. And we've actually had a previous conversation. You have been on this show before. Your
Yes.
episode previously is number 26. You're living a toxic life. What now? So I would invite the listeners, go back, find that episode so you can really get to know Natalie even a little bit better and deeper and know where she's really coming from in this story. Because today we're actually going to be talking a lot about breast implants. And I truly believe that identity plays a big part of why women decide to get them in the first place. Can you share the reasons why you decided to get yours?
Yeah, absolutely. At the time, I was competing in bikini bodybuilding competitions. I was very outward focused. All I cared about was attention, social media likes and follows. Back then, there was not as much social media influence as now. I got my implants when I was 21 years old. So fresh out of college, not really knowing what I'm doing with my life, but I thought I needed them. I was so set on it. I took out a loan, so got myself into debt just to get them, and just realized that they're eventually not all what they say that they are, because they really don't say what they are, to say the least. The
No.
ingredients were never discussed. The side effects were never discussed. They just scheduled the surgery, took my money, and that was it.
Yeah, they make it so simple, right? It's like it's not a big deal whatsoever, even then, though it's a quite an extensive surgery to get implants. Yet you said a lot about social media and that you thought you needed them. Can you expound on that a little bit? What was it that you thought was wrong that maybe needed to be fixed?
Sure, absolutely. When you're competing in bikini bodybuilding and many fitness competitions of that sorts, they're critiquing your body, literally like the shape of your body. And when you lose a lot of body fat and you gain muscle, your body shifts. And sometimes it shifts in the right places, sometimes it shifts in the wrong places, or so the judges would say. Women that did not have bigger breasts, which naturally your breasts will deflate or lessen in size and shape as you're dieting, as you're competing, getting down to extreme levels on the scale, your body fat just goes with it on that area. So my breast tissue was shrinking and I didn't like it because I knew if I wanted to win, I had to be proportionate up here, have a small waist, and then, have a small, bigger bottom half. So for me, it was one of those things that like I needed to win. I'm very competitive and I saw other girls getting them. I had a best friend at the time that got them and I was like, okay, where did you go? How much? I'm next. So I immediately decided to do it just so that way I felt more confident in the gym whenever I was doing my workouts as well as on stage when I was competing for the whole year. I competed all of, I believe it was 2014. Yeah. And I got them in 2011.
Okay.
So
I mean, that makes perfect sense because I mean, the world tells us that we have to be a certain way, right? And we're looked at, if you're a woman, you're supposed to have breasts. And if you're in the competitive world, then you need to be in balance so that you're getting the points and the scores that you want to win. And being so competitive, as you mentioned, I mean, of course, you were going to get implants. So, did you ever like wonder what would happen in the future, or think about what could happen because you got implants?
yeah, let's go deeper. So I thought I couldn't be loved. I thought I would never find a man that loved my body the way it was because I was comparing myself to other women that had bigger chests, either naturally or unnatural. That was just something that I thought I needed. So in order to be happy in a relationship, which obviously is a lie, that is false. If a man doesn't love you for you and, respect your body as is, then that's not the man for you or me for that matter. So I never thought that there would be any consequences or side effects because a doctor's giving it to me. So it must be good for me.
Hmm, that's really interesting. How much blind trust we really put into the medical field and doctors. I think that we've been taught that. I think that that is where we place our confidence a lot of the time because we look at ourselves as not being the educated one. And yet, we're also not being told everything by doctors. As you previously mentioned, you weren't warned, you weren't told of any dangers, you weren't told that there could be a problem at any time. So, how old? Okay, so first of all, you said 21, right? Is how old you were? Okay. And how long had you had them when you started to realize that you were getting sick because of these things?
So the journey went like this. I started noticing issues when I got sober with my body because when you're under the influence doing drugs, drinking, you're not in tune with your body. You can't feel things. You're kind of aloof to anything, medical that may be happening with you because you think, "Oh, it's a side effect of the alcohol," right? I feel tired or lethargic because I'm hungover. So you don't necessarily connect the dots. So it took me, number one, getting sober. Number two, I went anti-inflammatory. I cut out processed foods. I stopped eating out. I really was focused on my nutrition, making sure I was eating all the right things because I felt a lot of now knowing breast implant illness symptoms where I had inflammation in my hands. My hands would throb, very lethargic, couldn't get out of bed. I would get constant just like brain fog, all these issues that a young person my age like shouldn't be experiencing. So I started process of elimination, right? I cut out all the things that I thought were causing inflammation. I started detoxing and doing good things to my body, and I still felt horrible. That's when something clicked because I did all of the things that I thought in my mind, right? I went down the list of like 6 different things to help me feel better, and it wasn't working. So the last common denominator I had that I could pinpoint were my breast implants, because I had subtly seen things on social media. Women have sent me articles. My aunt sent me an article many years before I decided to explant. And it was like, God was just nudging, like just sending these like subtle, like, God winks of like, hey, look at this. Open your eyes, Natalie. Here's the solution. But, I didn't put two and two together until it was the right time. I know that explanting can feel like a huge undertaking as well, because you need support. You need people that can be around you to help you, and make sure things are taken care of at home. So I do feel like meeting my husband and going on that journey was just right timing for me.
Yes, and that is a great point that I'd like to make is because as you were starting to have this awareness is really when you met your husband and you guys got married. And when you get married to your soulmate, you're the man of your dreams, you of course want to have a family, right? So did you have any concerns or fears about your implants and having children?
I do believe I had some because I never got pregnant before. Not to say that I was a Christian in my past life, definitely was not. But the fact that it never happened made me believe that maybe something is happening because of that. Also, my husband and I were together and married for quite some time and still never got pregnant. So I do believe God's timing is a role in that as well, but also my body was fighting itself, because when you get implants, your body starts to form a capsule around them. Literally, this piece of skin that's just covering it, it hardens, it is protecting your body from the toxic chemicals that are leaking out of the implants. I had saline implants, and they still have silicone and all of those nasties that you read. The chemical soup is the best graphic I found that shows all the breakdown of everything that's inside them. It's still leaking your body. Your body's literally trying to protect itself and fight against it. So if your body is so focused on fighting that inflammation, those autoimmune mimicking symptoms, you may not be able to get pregnant because it's doing so much work over here that it can't focus on being, clean and open and fertile and receiving on this other side. I like to, portray that picture. It's like the good and then the bad. Like it's all bad. It's fighting the bad. So it's not going to be able to open and focus on the good.
Oh, agreed 100%. And I mean, there's actually over 37 toxic chemicals that goes into the makeup of that outer core of implants that is the silicone, right? And I had the same experience because I had saline implants as well. And you're absolutely correct. In your immune system goes into hyperdrive anytime there's something that is foreign, right? That's the job of our immune system. Our immune systems are in place to battle anything that is foreign to the body that is dangerous to it. I mean, think about it. With a little, very natural sliver, a piece of wood that goes into your finger or wherever it goes, what happens? It gets really sore and tender. It can get full of pus, right? And then it gradually pushes it out because it has that foreign thing. And that's something that's natural. A piece of wood is a natural thing, right? But when we start talking about implants that's completely toxic, it takes so much more. Plus, there's no exit for our bodies to be able to push them out. And so it's in constant hyperactive drive. And so when our bodies are in survival mode, we aren't in the thought process of creation mode, right?
Exactly.
Our
Survival mode is what I would call it. Some days I was lucky if I could go to the grocery store and push the Costco cart because it was just so heavy and exhausting for me to do. I had to break up my chores. I couldn't do like four, five, six different errands in one day. I had to do one a day because it was too much for me. And it was crippling. Honestly, it was crippling. My work suffered, my social life suffered, my friend, and family circle, they started noticing something was wrong with me. Like, like you're different, like what's going on? And I was just saying I'm sick. Like I think I'm sick from these things. And I started admitting it. And first step to any type of recovery, right? I have lots of experience in that department too, is you have to accept it. So I finally accepted that my breast implants are getting the best of me. They're not letting me live my life the way I want to live. And I'm just so grateful that I was able to listen to that. And then 90 days after I decided to explant, I got these suckers out.
Our stories are so similar. I mean, like, seriously, it's like I learned about what breast implant illness was by happenstance, is what most people would say. It was a coincidence, but no, I believe God put me where I needed to be to learn, right? Because I was so sick. And it happened to be a clubhouse room where women were telling their stories just like you are now. And then there's doctors chiming in about what they've seen with their patients and all of this different stuff. And I was like, light bulb goes on, right? And as soon as you had that awareness, you moved on it. And mine was 90 days after learning about it as well. So I think that that's just such a coincidence that we have such a similar timeline. Yet, when you've been as sick as we were, which I would really like, and I know you don't have the list right in front of you, but can you kind of run down what were the first things that you noticed? You mentioned inflammation, but what was going along with the inflammation? What were the first things that you noticed as symptoms for breast implant illness that you are experiencing? And then kind of just go into the deeper list of things so that people can really be thinking about if they're feeling a certain way, maybe this is something they need to consider.
Sure. Yeah. It took hearing other stories, just like you, for me to understand what this was, because there's no diagnosis out there. There's no medical, symptomatic list that people are sharing. It's just word of mouth, word of mouth. And now there's some more awareness about it, right? Many years later, but women have been getting sick for years and years and no one's done anything about it. So for me, it was mainly the inflammation, just constant joint pain. It felt like I had arthritis in my fingers. Um, Ankles, knees cracking, achy. Just I felt old. I literally felt like I was dying. That is the best way to describe it. And I've heard other women say that. And that is a symptom on the symptom sheet. You feel like you're dying because there's no other way to describe it. It was just crippling. Some days I'd have lots of energy, and then other days I literally could not get out of bed. I've had mood swings, anxiety, depression. The list just goes on and on and on. But the biggest ones for me were the fatigue, the inflammation, the achiness, and then the brain fog. I could not operate on a high level. I'm a high achiever. I can get a million things done in one day. I multitask, I run businesses, I do a lot. But when I had these, I felt like I could only handle one thing at a time, and just something was off, something was not operating at the highest level that it could. And when I finally healed and was able to move forward, I started to produce like work in the same capacity that I used to. And it was just so rewarding to see the change, not only in my body, my face, you could immediately see the difference in my health, how I felt, but also my productivity. That was huge. I had energy. I could, do workouts and work and run errands and just go, go, go and not even think twice about it and not be hopped up on caffeine either.
Right, right. So I think it's really important that we remind everybody, how old were you when you first learned about breast implant illness?
I was about 28 years old.
So see, she is young. She's a young, young, young lady, and she was feeling like she was dying from old age type things.
Yes.
That's what happens when your body's being poisoned.
Hmm.
So crazy, so crazy. So you go through the process. How did you select your doctor, by the way?
I started doing research. I wanted to find someone that was an explant expert. Not everyone that puts implants in knows how to correctly and safely take them out. So I live in Tampa, Florida, and my doctor was Dr. Barnett out of Sarasota, Florida. So I wanted someone that was local. So she's about an hour away from me. She's been practicing for decades now, has people fly in from all over the world. She's a breast implant illness advocate. She's sent letters to the FDA on our behalf, all of, the women that are suffering. She truly takes a stand for this field. And I wanted someone like that I could trust, that understood that my symptoms are real. And I had my consultation and she just agreed with me, like, yes, you sound like you have breast implant illness. And just hearing a medical professional say that, just was this breath of fresh air, because I read so many stories in Facebook groups of women sharing that doctors told them they're crazy, or that that's not real, or that that's not something that can happen, which, like you said, if there's something foreign in your body, it's probably going to have a reaction to it because it's not supposed to be there. Our bodies are designed specifically by God the way they are, and that's how they should stay.
Agreed, 100%. And there are so many women out there that are suffering with these symptoms of breast implant illness, and they are being gaslit by the medical professionals. A lot of the time, the medical professionals are so dependent on implants as their source of income that they are afraid. They have fear and they don't want to lose their business, right? The doctor that actually did my explant for me, he's been doing explants for 14 years now. And prior to that, he was primarily an implant specialist, right? But then when he started learning, and there are so many good doctors out there, and that's why I wanted to make sure that we address this today, because I want to make sure that women know that you need to do your research. You need to ask questions. You need to have a support system of people that are providing you with the right kind of questions to ask of your doctor so that you can make sure, first of all, that everything is taken out. Can you clarify the importance of how, everything being taken out, not just the implant?
Yes, absolutely. That was something that I learned and had to make sure of by whoever I was going to go to, is that they take out the capsule. The capsule contains and holds many of the toxins. So even if you remove the shell, if you deflate it, if you take the implant out, you still have to take out the capsule that's formed around it. And everyone that has implants has a capsule, unless you recently just got them in and it may have not had enough time to form. But that capsule is as important in removal as the implant itself.
Yeah, agreed. Because the capsule actually, what it's done is it's trapped a
Mm.
lot of the toxicity that has been leaching out of the implant itself. And so if you leave the capsule inside of you, you still have the toxic factory that is able to continue with the sickness that you're
It's
experiencing.
so heartbreaking seeing and reading stories where women get the explant and then they still feel sick. Come to find out that their surgeon did not remove the capsule because A, they didn't know about it, or B, they lied about it. So
Yes.
always for proof, always confirm that they're going to take that out. And it's so satisfying seeing those pictures and seeing those implants after. I kept mine for many years just to have to do content with, and just as a reminder of, something that was important as a stepping stone in my life. And then once I finally got pregnant, I decided to release them because they no longer served me, and I felt like they weren't holding anything against me anymore.
Yeah, it was interesting. And because it's not like it's a prize. It's a reminder, right? It's a reminder of a decision that we made that was not necessarily good, but it's also a reminder of a choice that we made that was choosing us in life.
Yes.
Because removing that thing that we considered was part of our identity is not easy. Did you struggle with that at all in removing those, uh, the boulders that you had on your chest? Were you concerned at all in having your implants removed?
Oh, yes. Me and my double Ds definitely had a lot of trauma bonding.
Mm.
I had to go to counseling. I sought counsel to help release those soul ties of the identity that I thought. I cried and cried and cried, leading up to it, mentally preparing for it. It was a huge part of my life for 10 years. I had my implants for 10 years, from 21 to 31. And those years are like your years where you form attachments to people, many, times I was codependent, whether it be to a person or to a thing. I idolized different things, and I idolized my implants. I thought that they made me me, that they just made me feel and look better. But you guys, your identity is not in your body. Your identity is in who you are, your character, how you represent yourself, and all of the other things that make up your persona. So I feel like after I started to feel better and then I sought counsel, I truly believe that there was a shift that happened energetically within me, in my spirit. I felt more pure. I felt more holy. I just felt right, like as if it was the old me. I was so happy to be able to run and not, be in pain. I was so happy to be able to lay on my chest and sleep on my stomach and not feel like it's uncomfortable. There was just so many things that were just like helping me feel lighter, and it's on a spiritual level as well, not just physical.
Yeah, agreed. So you and your husband really walked through this together. He was right there by your side. And did you have conversations around this with him? And what was his input into you receiving this explant?
Absolutely. It was very important that we talked about it and what happens after because, being intimate is a huge part of our lives as human beings on planet Earth and, being naked is vulnerable and your body's going to look different after explant. He actually supported me so much where I did not want to get a lift because financially it was more expensive and we were not in the place to, make those types of decisions. But what we did was we took out care credit, which gives you like a payment plan. So there are options out there if you're wanting to explant and not knowing how in the heck you're going to pay for it. Ask your doctors; they could have a solution. But he suggested, I think you're going to want a lift. You may not be happy with the outcome without it. And I was like, no, 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 no. I just want these things out. Like it's fine, it's fine. And then after consideration and consulting with my doctor, she did recommend a lift. And I'm so glad that I did that because I said, one and done, I'm going under. I will do the lift now before I have kids because I know breastfeeding can also do a number on your body in that department. But yeah, so we talked about it. I expressed things maybe, different. I of course cried in the shower, my first showers, because you see yourself different. You have scars. You're not this, whole picture on the outside anymore. You've got some erase and some scratch marks, and that's okay, but it heals in time. So we just were open. And I said, for the first several months, I'm probably just gonna wear a bra and leave it on. And that's what we did, and we got through it together.
That is so good. Open communication is so important, especially with your significant other when you're going through something like this, because it's not just a reduction in your breast side. It really is an emotional trauma. It's a physical trauma because it is hard on your body to go through this surgery to remove this toxic crap that we put in. I know we made these choices. I know we have responsibility in this because we did say, okay, I want these implants, but it's so traumatizing on us removing them that having those open conversations and having relationships with people around you to support you is so important. And I am so glad that you and your husband prepared yourselves prior to and then walked through it together. It's so good. So good. And then I
Yeah.
also want a second care credit, by the way, because care credit is how I also was able to get my explant because it is really expensive. It costs like double, if not triple sometimes, the cost of implanting to explant. It costs more. And so there are so many women out there that are like waiting and waiting and waiting to be able to afford this because it's not something that is covered by insurance. And so care credit, what it did for me is it gave me an 18-month time period where there was no interest. And so I could pay like I had paid cash, but be able to pay it over some time. So I completely second that for you. And then I also think that the cost is another reason why women have to be really cautious about the doctors they choose and that they make sure that everything is done right the first time because you don't want to have to go and find another doctor that's going to have to fix it.
Absolutely. And they really don't tell you that once you get them, you're supposed to actually get them replaced every 10 years. So
I
it's like
had mine for 21 years and they had never been replaced. So yeah, I know. Right.
women that have had them for 40 or, longer, and it's never talked about or even considered. It's so easy to say yes and just, you want, you want, you want. We live in such a society that you just want that instant satisfaction, gratification, but you don't really think about consequences. So there definitely are lots of them, that potentially could arise if you're having issues or if you change your mind. I've seen some women in these Facebook groups where they're saying, I just got implants 2 months ago. I want them out already. It happens. Everyone's
Mhm.
story is different, but everyone's body reacts different too. I feel like 7 years after I got mine, I started feeling the effects of it. But what if it was affecting me earlier? I don't know. I just wasn't sober to know.
Right, exactly. Well, that's the thing is that you had such a major shift in your life. And like I said before, What Now Tribe, if you haven't listened to the first episode that we did with Natalie about the toxic life that she was in, you need to go and listen. So everything really makes sense in this episode. Because when you are utilizing, you know, either it's drugs or alcohol or even the environment that you can be in, that you're getting so much praise because of how you look, right? In the nightlife scenario, that a lot of the times we just ignore things. We ignore those warning signs or those symptoms that we're feeling because of those things.
Absolutely. Or you just think, oh, this is just how it's always going to be. And I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. And I would love for you to tell us about that because when you explanted, you had some changes, right? What was it that you experienced after you had your implants removed?
The first thing I think was just shock, shock that this actually happened. That I couldn't believe the difference because shock in a good way. My eyes became brighter white. I took before pictures on the way in the car, and then I took an after picture in the car, and I put them side by side. And you may or may not have seen them on my social, but they are just astounding. Like I couldn't believe the difference in my face, the under eye bags. That was another thing is I noticed that I looked old in my face with implants and I was in my 20s, you guys. Like I shouldn't be looking like I'm, not taking care of myself when I am. I ate clean, I worked out, I drank all the water, I got sunshine. I did everything right and I still was looking and feeling ragged, so to say, old, just not lively and like something was wrong. So the biggest difference was my glow came back and I just had energy again. I was out walking like 3 days after. My explant was definitely an easier recovery than implant. On getting my implants in, I was bedridden for weeks. It was really hard to work. I had to have lots of help back then too. But I just honored my body through that recovery time. I let it heal and I did not try and, push myself too early to work out. I just gave myself some time because my body deserved it.
Yeah. And yet, when we're talking about this, I mean, you said you took the before picture and immediately after you could tell a difference. That I mean, and this is something that a lot of women have experienced. Me, myself, I experienced my eyes improving rapidly, even on how dry they were before to how they had moisture after type of things. And so there is things that people will notice very quickly after having their implants removed. Yet there are some people that don't notice something for a long time. And so that's where we just really want to be cautious and make sure everybody understands that everybody is unique and individual, and your experience is going to be different. But what I can tell you for sure is that your body will be better off removing the toxicity than leaving it in.
Exactly. It's almost one of those things that you just don't know how much better you could look or feel until you're on the other side.
Yes, yes. And by the way, I initially had that shock too of losing size on my chest, right? And yet now it's like I look back because I'm in my 50s, I'm moving into my mid 50s, right? And I love not having that extra pressure on my shoulders. I love not having the extra weight that I'm carrying around and the extra, back pain promoter because that extra heaviness up top, right? So there's so many benefits to just going with your natural design and how God created you.
Absolutely. I never had back pain, but I did remember waking up feeling like I could breathe deeper. Like my body was just functioning on a higher caliber. I actually had one of my implants attached to my ribs, so she had to scrape it off, which caused a lot of discomfort and soreness on one side. But she also said that because my implants were so heavy, I had 350 cc's on each side. They basically suppressed and indented my like chest cavity and my body needed to extend and go back to normal essentially because it was like a boulder literally was on my chest just pushing everything in. So how can you grow a human, like get pregnant and do all the changes that you do if you have this resistance, right? It's like it works against the natures of, what you're supposed to do. And I bring up fertility again because I just feel like it all clicks. It definitely all makes sense when I personally thought that they were causing issues with me trying to get pregnant.
Right. So, okay, so you explant, and how quickly do you guys end up getting pregnant?
A couple years later.
So a couple years later, you're pregnant. You have this beautiful natural birth, and you have a beautiful son. He's just the sweetest little boy. And as I mentioned in your bio, it's like you 100% breastfed, because I know that that was one of your fears too after explanting and then having that lift, was whether or not you even could. So, what was that experience like, and how joyous was it knowing that you could?
It was definitely a fear because all that tissue and nerves and everything kind of gets dismantled. It gets all shooken up whenever they're in there doing their job to remove everything. And given the lift, there was a part where like your nipple is altered. So that was a concern, but my doctor reassured me that other women have successfully breastfed after, and there shouldn't be any complications or issues. So that gave me hope. And then once I had my son, my when my milk came in, I was like, okay, it's real. Everything's fine. Everything's good. Because you never know, right? If something's broken or if something, went wrong, like you won't know until it's that time. So I was very excited to see that everything was operating, and now it's just a natural way of motherhood for me, and it's a beautiful thing.
Oh, thank you, Jesus. That is such a great thing to hear, because being a mother, part of breastfeeding is that connection with your child that really is like that bonding that cannot be broken for the rest of life.
In the
So,
beginning, I actually had issues with him latching. We thought he had a tongue tie, so we went to a specialist. They recommended therapy, and I just said, let's wait this out. So I was pumping exclusively in the beginning and bottle feeding. It took about a month and a half or 2 months where he all of a sudden just started to, like, gnaw at my shirt. Like, he just, like, was trying to, like, eat my shirt in that area, and I'm like, "Oh, you want a nurse buddy? Okay." So I whipped it out, and we used a nipple shield in the beginning because he had to kinda learn how to latch, and it was a little painful. But that shield is wonderful. It's like this piece of plastic that goes over your nipple, and it kind of symbolizes, like, a bottle for him that he was used to, and it still allows milk to get through because there's holes in it. So, it's just like that barrier. So we use that to transition. And now it's been, exclusively breastfeeding. He's 4.5 months old. And it wasn't until he showed me he wanted to. And, I was okay with it. I was like, as long as he's getting my milk in the beginning, it's okay that I'm bottle feeding. It's fine. Everything's fine. But I always had this gut feeling deep down, my heart's desire. God knows, you guys, He knows your heart's desire, that I wanted to be a breastfeeding mom. And it just happened when he was ready on his timing.
yes, and so we've mentioned God a couple times and Jesus. So what part did your faith play during this whole struggle, first of all, with the breast implant illness, and then after having them removed and becoming a mom?
Oh man, such a loaded question.
I know,
Uh,
right?
I probably talked about the before in the previous episode, but having this whole life transformation of ridding everything toxic from my life, I had to come to Jesus to get help and to truly surrender and say, I'm done trying it my way because my way ain't working. So we did that. We, as in me and God, we started getting to know each other. We got into a relationship with each other. When I moved to the city that I live now, I started going to a church. I joined a program, and I never looked back. So I truly believe that He was working on me, one thing at a time, one area at a time, whether that be different addictions or issues that I was dealing with personally. And then it led into my physical aspect of helping me heal and remove my breast implants. So definitely is a huge role.
And this comes back to what you just got done saying, and God knows the desires of your heart. And He knew that you wanted to be a mom and that you wanted to be able to be a fully functional mom. And so he took you through all these different things that you needed to remove from your life in order for that to happen. That is so
Absolutely.
good. He is so good.
Yeah. And I know many women, also have breast implants and get pregnant. So this is not me saying that you won't get pregnant if you have breast implants, but I just felt convicted in my spirit that they needed to come out in order for me to live my best life, like you said, and become a mom. So everyone's journey and how he speaks to us is just very unique.
Yes, absolutely. It just comes back to each one of us has a different journey, right? Our implants can, for some people, it doesn't affect them outwardly. They don't realize
Right.
anything that's going on. But then there's people like us and others that have had significant improvement in our health by removing them from our lives. So it's good for people to have that proper expectation and understanding that every single one of us is unique. You may have implants and not have a problem at all. But I will tell you, keep an eye on it. Be aware that if something starts to happen and they're not quite able to give you a clear answer on what's going on, I will tell you, women that have implants that have been diagnosed with autoimmune disorders of any kind really need to look at their implants.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's so many stories and testimonies out there. Just look up breast implant in your Facebook groups, and you'll see the dozens and thousands and millions of women that are speaking out on this. And that is what's so powerful about social media is that if it wasn't for other women speaking out on their stories, I would not have had the courage and the conviction to follow through with this because I was doubtful after reading some articles. I didn't believe it until I heard and saw the before and after that other women shared on their stories. Angie Lee, her highlight reel about this completely clicked with me. Everything she said, I was feeling when I was sick. And I just knew that was the final push I needed to explant and to, hope and pray for a better outcome on the other side.
Yeah, it's so good sharing stories, just like I always say. Mhm. I
The
think
heel is
stories save lives, people. Stories save lives.
so true.
It is. So, okay, I would love to know if you could go back and talk to yourself before you ever thought about getting implants. What would you say to yourself about breast implants?
I would say don't do it. But I was so naive and hard-headed, I probably wouldn't have listened to myself anyways.
Right, right. What would you have said to yourself about who you were without them?
I probably would have told myself that you're, beautiful and perfect the way you are, but everyone's journey I feel like is different. And I do believe that sometimes we have to go through things and experience pain to then be able to help other people. And just by me sharing my story publicly on social media over the last several years, I can't even count on my hands how many women I know I personally have influenced to explant, including my mother-in-law. And that was sweet to see.
Yes. Being able to know that you sharing your story vulnerably impacted someone else to make a decision. I mean, who knows? I mean, your mother in law will probably live longer because of the influence you had on her life. So great job. Great job for that. One of the stories that I have with me sharing mine is a young lady that was going to ask for implants for her birthday. I mean, she's had her two boys and she's a young mom in her 20s, and she was going to ask for implants because she had those sagging boobies after breastfeeding, right? And because she saw my story and because I was vulnerable in sharing it, she sent me a message and just said, Marcy, thank you. It's like I had wanted those so desperately, and now I have no desire at all to get implants. I'm like, well, if you want, you can get a lift, right? You don't have to get implants.
Exactly. There's other options out there, but the doctors are quick to just push implants because that's how they make money.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, what would you say to other women that are considering implants or women with implants or even men that love them? What piece of advice would you give them?
They're not everything you think they are. There's so much more to a person, to a female than just her outward appearance. And It literally took me coming to Jesus and developing my relationship with the Lord to learn that. And I'm still learning it because I'm not perfect. But I will say that there's a lot that goes into it where it's just now I look at it and I'm like, it just leads you to sin. That's all it does. There's nothing good comes out of it. It's just, our sinful nature where we want to feel or look a certain way. For women, it's ego, it's pride, it's um seduction, lust, like all those things. That's of the world. That's not of God. So
Yeah. And all of that leads you down into a living death, and you don't want that at all. So, how can the audience connect with you and follow you? Because they need to see everything you're doing. You are so impressive in all the businesses that you're doing, all the people that you're helping with marketing, and then sharing your personal life and story. How can they follow you?
thank you. So it's just Natalie Tucker on Facebook, the real Natalie Nicole on Instagram. So REAL, Natalie Nicole, no H. And then my business is natalienicoleconsulting.com.
All right. I love it. Thank you so much for being such an amazing guest today. Do you have any final thoughts or words that you want to share?
Just reach out to me or someone else if you're considering or if you're struggling, not knowing if this is the right decision for you. Because if I didn't have my woman tribe and people around me that I could talk to and, see their stories and their advice, then I probably wouldn't have done it. So it does take a village, especially if you're going through something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's been a constant. It was a constant in my story to your story. And now sharing that offer out to other women, it really does take hearing other people's stories and having others to support you that understand what you're going through to make this be part of your journey that you can grow from and just really be able to use it to help others. So thank you so much. I am so grateful to you. And I am grateful that we were brought together and being able to share this message to so many women. I know it's going to bless them. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.